Well, good morning, everyone. If you've not been with us before, we're in a study on the book of in Genesis on the life of Joseph. Joseph is one of my favorite people in the Bible. He is my son's oldest name, Joseph. Joseph Daniel is his name. But the interesting thing is, Joseph didn't write a book. There's no book of Joseph. Joseph didn't do any miracles. Joseph didn't slay a giant. Joseph did nothing great except be great. Why was he great? In a word, attitude. How's your attitude today? Great attitude? Because, listen, that to a large extent, how successful and how happy you are is determined by your attitude, and you choose your attitude. So we're going to have a good attitude today, right? Going to have a good attitude. Now, the reason why I think the Bible spends so much time on Joseph, more than Abraham, Isaac, or Jacob. Joseph is the longest biography in the book of Genesis. More said about him. He's only one of two that are named in the Bible that there's no sin named with him. Daniel and he are the two. He's one of three government workers. He, along with Daniel and Nehemiah, were government workers. And so we come to Daniel, and what made him great was his attitude in spite of what he was going through. So if you're going through a tough time today, your attitude's important in how you go through this. As we've seen so far, when no matter what people say to you, and they said to him, they called him in Genesis 37, "Here comes the dreamer. Here he comes, the dreamer." Did you have any nicknames growing up? You know, kids can be mean. They don't know they're mean because they're kids, but kids are mean. And you say, "Sticks and stones may break my bones, but words never hurt." Words hurt people, and they last a long, long time. I'm not going to ask for a show of hands here, but I want you to know something. Some of you still deal with the label that was given to you when you were in the 6th grade, and you need to let it go today. You need to let it go. He's the dreamer. He's the dreamer. He's this. He was whatever you were called. I had a friend of mine so skinny we called him Sticky. Another friend that had a hair that was, we called him Brillo because his hair was like a Brillo pad. Now, I don't know if that was mean or not. We didn't mean to be mean. We're just kids. We're ignorant. But they carry those things. In fact, when I go back to see him, I still see Sticky and still see Brillo. And what you still call them, I hope they're okay with it, I think. But when you say something, we get hurt by things that are said to us and things that are done to us. You think of Joseph. I'm picking up here now. What was done to him was, imagine being sold by your brothers into slavery, sent off to Egypt as a slave. And then once you get there, after you're there a while, Potiphar's wife makes an accusation against him, falsely accuses him. She was part of the Me Too movement. And falsely accuses him. And then he goes to prison. So think about this. Your brothers sell you. How's your attitude? Your boss's wife tries to seduce you and then lies about you, and you go to prison. How's your attitude? He lived a life of forgiveness and let it go. That's what he did. So that when you realize everybody here has been hurt. Something said to you, something done to you, or something not done to you. Like the butler who said he was going to remember Joseph and didn't for 2 years. The person it's not something that they said or did, they just ignore you. I think that's the worst of all. Just ignore him, he'll go away. Or outright rejection. But the things that, you can see just by a loser, little things that we do, we don't say a word, but we feel like that. And you can't ever please your parents. No matter what you do, you can't please a coach. No matter how hard you try, it's not good enough for the teacher. And so you feel this negativity. In all of those things, your attitude is critical. You've got to choose the right kind of attitude. Otherwise, the option is that you hold it in. Now, if you hold it in, it shows up. If you hold it in, you become resentful. And then what happens is you deplete your emotions. And you don't know what's wrong with you, but you know something's not right because you no longer have any passion in life. People, I don't know what's wrong with me. I don't love my wife anymore. Don't love my husband anymore. What's happened is you've held on to something. You've not let it go. And now that thing that you've held on to is depleting you emotionally and spiritually, and it shows up with anger and bitterness and criticalness and rigidness and suspicion and all that stuff. It shows up in one way or another, and so you just have to let it go. You have to let it go. And so Joseph went through all these things, and now he is with his brothers for the second time. They came the first time, and here's the thing about Joseph is he so parallels Jesus that he knew his brothers, even though his brothers didn't know him. He loved his brothers, even though his brothers didn't love him. He had a plan of salvation for them, even though they didn't even care about that. And he had made a decision that he was going to make things right for them, whether they liked it or not. And when he wanted to draw them close, the last thing he wanted to do is draw close. They wanted to get out of here. They wanted to run away. So we're in Genesis chapter 45. That was bringing a little bit up to date, but we're in Genesis 45 today. And it is a very, very emotional scene because even though he knows who they are, they don't know who he is. And even though you forgive, I just want to make a distinction today. There's a difference between forgiveness and trust. When someone breaks your trust, they have to earn the trust back. Now, if somebody does something wrong to you, you can say, forgive. Yeah, I let it go, I let it go, I let it go. But if you've loaned somebody some money and they don't pay it back, you can forgive that debt, but you're not going to loan them money anymore, are you? Right? If somebody's violated your trust, they have to regain that trust. So where we come to today is with Joseph, they violated everything about their relationship with his brother. And now he was wondering, he forgave them. He had a great attitude, one of forgiveness, but now he wants to see how they've changed or if they have changed. How many of you know that we tend to freeze people in time? The people you were with college or early married, or we tend to freeze people and keep them the same. How many know that you're not the same as you were 5 years ago, 5 months ago? So when we freeze people in time, we really do a disservice to them and ourselves because we think they're the same and they're not the same. They're not the same any more than you were the same. But what he does is he sets up a test in chapter 44. He sets up a test where his brothers are coming, he's sending them off again, and he says, now, I want you to put the money back in the sacks, but I want you to put my cup, the prime minister's cup, put it in my younger brother Benjamin's bag. So they did, and off they went, and they caught him. He said, I think your guys are scoundrels. I've come to see whether you are or you're not. And so they opened the bags of the other ones. Everything's fine. And they opened the bag of Benjamin, and there was the cup. And he said, and whoever bag I find the cup, they're going to stay here, and they're going to be slaves to me forever. So now he's trying to see, what are they going to do? What's going to happen here? And this is so moving because in chapter 44, the one who said, sell him, you know who that was? Judah. Judah and Simeon are stinkers. Issachar is not far behind. But these guys, in fact, I'm not going to get sidetracked here, but when Judah sees this, Judah redeems himself in the eyes of his brother and earns his trust because he said, this has happened because we've been guilty and God is exposing us for what we've done. Joseph is now 39 years old. He was sold at 17, made prime minister at 30, 7 good years, fat years, and now 2 lean years, so that, if my math is correct, that makes him 39. He hasn't seen his brothers. His brothers have not seen him in 22 years. Think about that. He's been away from them longer than he was with them. He's been in Egypt longer than he was in his homeland. He's become an Egyptian. And when he speaks to them, he speaks through an interpreter, through an Egyptian. And so they have no idea when they're talking amongst themselves in Hebrew that he knows exactly what they're saying. And so Judah says, listen, this is happening because we're guilty of the thing that we did so long ago. Don't you remember how he cried out and we didn't listen? And so he said, nope, I told you the order. Benjamin's staying, and then he wanted to test him. The rest of you can go in peace. Just go ahead. Just be gone. And Judah was having no part of that. Judah said, and I'll pick it up here in chapter 44 before I get to 45. Chapter 44, verse 33 and 34, last two verses says this. This is Judah. Now therefore, please let your servant remain instead of the lad. Let me be the substitute. I'll stay here. Don't keep Benjamin, my Lord. Let the lad go up with his brothers. So the first concern, can I trust him? Are they so selfish that they would sacrifice my youngest brother, their youngest brother, for their own safety? Secondly, how shall I go to, verse 44, how shall I go to my father if the lad's not with me? I see that evil it would come upon my father. He'll die. This will kill him. So the two things where the areas of trust were broken was with his father and with him. But now he sees Judah saying, listen, we can't do this again. It would kill Dad. I'll stay here. Let him go. Think of the emotion. 22 years. They had no idea who he was. This was just the rough, tough prime minister who's, for whatever reason, just making things tough on them, and they don't know what to do about this. But what we're about to see here is a reunion that is amazing. And there's three things that happen in the next few verses. Number one, Joseph exposes his heart to his brothers. They don't know who he is, but he exposes his heart to his brothers. Verse 1 of 45. Then Joseph could not restrain himself before all those who stood by him, and he cried out, make everyone get out of here. So no one stood out while Joseph made himself known. And Joseph wept aloud, verse 2, and the Egyptians and the house of Pharaoh heard it. He's crying out. He's crying out because of what he has seen and what he's experienced, and what now his brothers are before him. It's a reunion, a family reunion, but they're not in it yet. And I was watching this week military reunions. If you go on YouTube, you can do it. I couldn't take. I watched one. It was 12 and a half minutes long. I just cried for 12 and a half minutes. And I said, can you give me a clip? And so if we have a clip, could you have that clip we can show? I just want to show a couple reunions of soldiers coming home after being gone for some time. Aren't reunions great? She's shocked. This is the last one. Reunions. We're about to experience a reunion after 22 years. And the brothers are clueless, And Joseph can't take it. When Judah said, I'll stay. I'll be the substitute. Send my brother home. It'll kill my dad if he's not going home. I'll stay. I'll be a slave for the rest of my life. And the emotion, Joseph wept aloud. Then verse 3, Joseph said to his brothers, "Are ye Joseph?" Think about this. They're thinking, what in the world is this? I am Joseph, and these guys are riddled with guilt. They've carried for so long. They couldn't answer him, for they were dismayed. I bet they were. They're terrified. This was a guy that was rough on them anyway. And Joseph said, verse 4, "Please come near to me." And they came near to Joseph, and he said, "I am Joseph, your brother, whom you sold into Egypt." It's filled with emotion as Joseph is exposing his heart. And I think, by the way, I think they're kind of wondering what's going on. I don't know how further they went, but they clearly understood that this was Joseph now. So he exposes his heart. And then second thing that he did was he explained his perspective. Now I want you to see in the next 3 verses, verse 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, I guess it's 4. God is used 4 times in 5 verses. Listen, problems will not defeat you. Perspective will defeat you. It's how you see things. It's not what happens, it's how you see what happens. And Joseph saw in everything that had happened to him, he saw the hand of God, the love. He knew God loved him, and he's on his side. Do you know God loves you? Do you know God loves you? Yes. It's foundation point. Do you know he's on your side? Yes. Turn to somebody and say, God's on my side. What happens when you're passed over for a promotion? What's happening when somebody edges you out and they take the promotion? What happens when somebody says something bad about you and you have a consequence because of what they said or what they did? How's your attitude then? How's the forgiveness then? If you hang on to it, I'll tell you, it'll drain you so much and you won't know what's going on. In fact, you may say, I don't know what's wrong with me. I don't have a passion for the Lord anymore. I don't have a passion for my family anymore. I don't have a passion for my job. I don't have a passion for my hobby. I have no passion. What's happened? Something you've held on to is draining you of the passion in your life. So you've got to learn to see life from God's perspective and not your own. And how do you do that? You bring him into everything. Notice chapter 45, verse 5. But now, therefore, do not be grieved or angry. They've got to be terrified. They sold him now 22 years later. Here he is, the guy. And they know this is the guy. This is the guy. And this guy is our brother, and we sold him. Is he going to kill us? He emptied the room. Now, is he going to kill us? They're terrified. Don't be grieved or angry with yourselves, because you sold me here, for God sent me before you to preserve life. For these 2 years, so now we know we're 7 years of fat, now 2 years, he's 39. There's been famine in the land, and there's still 5 more years in which there'll be neither plowing or harvesting. Verse 6, and God sent me before you to preserve a posterity for you in the earth and to save your lives by great deliverance. One more God. Verse 8, and so now it was not you who sent me here, but who? God in verse 5, God in verse 7, God in verse 8, God. And the Lord, and he may be father to Pharaoh and Lord of all his house and ruler throughout the land. It's God. It's just God. Humble yourself under the mighty hand of God, and he will exalt you in due time. When Joseph realizes, and I can't imagine anything worse than what he's gone through from 17 to 30. I can't imagine being sold, going to prison, being labeled. But this is the thing. You cannot let one point of failure define your life. You cannot let one name call define your life. You need to let that stuff go, and you need to let resentment go. You need to blow that stuff away. Let the Spirit of God blow that stuff away. I didn't know Jimmy was going to talk about reconciliation, but that's what we're talking about. Be reconciled to God and be reconciled with people. And if you're not reconciled with people, you're not reconciled to God. Because he's called us to a ministry of reconciliation. So he explained his perspective that it's not about you and what you did to me. It's about the Lord and what he wanted to do in me and through me. Through this process, God has done something that wouldn't happen any other way. I'm here. Why? God. That's why. I'm here because of the Lord. If you're in a difficult situation right now, instead of blaming somebody else, complaining, griping, grousing, and strategizing to get even, I'll tell you, the stuff that's going on in our nation now with these shootings, it's people that don't know how to handle hurt. And so what they do is they hold on to it. The shootings that took place, 3 weeks ago in Nashville, and they killed 6 Christians, and I don't know the details, and they've not been very forthcoming with them, but I can tell you this, the shooter was hurt deeply. And he held on to that deep hurt, that deep wound, and it came out. The shootings that are going on in different schools and different things across America are people who have been hurt, and they don't know how to deal with hurt, and so they lash out, and they try to get even. Revenge. Revenge is not the answer. Forgiveness, reconciliation is always the answer. And so here's Joseph with his brothers. Don't be angry with yourselves. It's the Lord. Don't wonder or try to figure out how. It's God working in my life. God working in your life. And so all of this is God, 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 God. What's your perspective? Well, I don't know what the Lord's up to now, but it must be something good because this hurts bad. Right? I mean, this is serious stuff that the Lord's doing, but he is always up to something. Even when I don't see it, I know he's working because he loves me and he's on my side. So when anything counters that, I got to go back to what I know because this circumstance doesn't square with what I know about the Lord. What I know about the Lord is he loves me. This doesn't make sense to me. It doesn't have to make sense to you. You just have to say, Lord, and this is the key thing here. He surrenders. We'll continue on here. The next thing he does is he expressed his love. When you love someone, you'll show it. You dwell in the land of Goshen. That means draw near. The word Goshen means to draw near. Joseph wanted his brothers to be close to him. So you'll dwell in the land of Goshen, and you'll be near to me, and your children, and your children's children, and your flocks, and your herds, and all that you have. There I will provide for you, and all that you have, come. For there are still 5 more years. And behold, your eyes and the eyes of my brother Benjamin see that it's in my mouth that speaks to you. So you should tell my father all my glory in Egypt and all you have seen and all you have hastened to bring my father down here. Then he fell on his brother Benjamin's neck and wept. And Benjamin wept. And moreover, he kissed all of his brothers and wept over all them. And after all that, his brothers talked to him. I bet they did. Can you imagine? How would you like to be a fly in the wall? How would you like to be Judah, who sold him? It's just amazing. It's amazing the grace of God who forgives us when we don't deserve it. Did these guys deserve it? It's the grace of God. It's the goodness of God. God loves us, and while we're yet sinners, Christ died for us. So we need to make sure that we are living now in a post-Christian America. We're living in a time when used to be, if you're a Christian, that was okay. Now, if you're a Christian, people are suspicious. There are anti-Christian websites. There are all this stuff that's going on. There is a great move. That's why we need a revival. This season in America's life, we are ripe for revival because kids are empty and they're looking in all the wrong places. They've been forsaken by their parents, not literally, but they feel forsaken. Broken homes produce broken people. And we've got a whole culture of broken homes and broken kids, and they don't know what to do. And so they look for all these gangs. Everybody needs to belong to something. If you don't belong to a family, then you belong to our family. We are the 22nd Street family. We are the... And they mark that because they so need to be needed and so want to be wanted. And so Joseph expressed his love to his brother by saying, listen, I'm going to take care of you from now on. When you love something, you're going to give to it. Love and giving always, God so loved that he gave. They always go together. And so he said, I love you. I hold nothing against you. But now I trust you. I trust you that you wouldn't forsake yourselves or forsake Benjamin for yourselves, but you substituted Joseph or Judah. Thank you for doing that. And now go get daddy. Go get daddy Jacob. Tell him I need him down here. We want him down here, and be a hurry. And then he sent off. You can read this. It'll take too long to read the rest of the chapter. But he sent him off with 10 donkeys, female donkeys, 10 male donkeys. They were all logged down with all kinds of stuff. They gave new garments, gave money. He gave Benjamin 5 new garments. These are Armanis you're talking about. You know, these are Egyptian Armani. These are suits that are fit, baby. These are really. And he sends them on their way. This is the thing he says. To Benjamin, he gave 300 pieces of silver and 5 changes of garments. To his father, 10 donkeys, female donkeys. Then he said this in verse 24. This is the younger brother. Now, see, you don't be troubled along the way. I know you guys. I don't want you arguing on the way home. I don't want you blaming. I don't want you criticizing. I don't want none of that. Just go home and get dad and bring him back here quick, because I want to be with you forever. And that's the heart of Jesus. When these guys showed up the second time, when the Lord comes his second time, the first time he came, the Bible says in John chapter 1, he came into his own, and his own did not receive him. He came to his own creation, but his own didn't receive him. But as many as received him, to them he gave the power, the right, the authority to be called the sons of God, the children of God. And one is neutral. He came to his own things, all of his creation, but he came to his own people, masculine. They didn't receive him. But when he comes back again, we will know him. We will see him for what he is. And he loves us. He knows us. He's prepared a place for us in heaven. And even though you may not need it, there's people in our culture all around who need the love of Jesus, who need salvation, who need to be cared for. Instead of seeing the behavior, and we can see behavior, we need to realize the problem is hurt and pain. And the answer is love and forgiveness. Well, Jesus gave it. Bless those who curse you. Love those who hate you. Do good to those who would spitefully use you. And he does the opposite of what we would expect to do. We're a culture of reciprocity. You pay me back, I'm getting you back. Joseph didn't do that. Jesus doesn't do that. He doesn't want us to do that. How do we respond? Love never fails. Love never fails to love. And I was going to tell the story of Corrie ten Boom, but you emptied my chamber on that one. So it's found in Tramp for the Lord, by the way. If you've not read The Hiding Place or Tramp for the Lord, they're great books. Corrie ten Boom, who lost her whole family, mom, dad, and sister Betsy. And then afterwards, she would go around and she would preach. And she would talk to people afterwards. And then she said this, after this one, the worst, the most cruel guard, the one that pushed and shoved Betsy around and me around, came up to me and said, Fräulein, that was good. I was in the German military as well. Would you forgive me? And she said, I just froze. I froze because I disliked this guy so much. Then she said, woodenly, artificially, I stuck out my hand. And he put his hand in my hand. And he said, a miracle took place. I suddenly felt love. And she said, to forgive is to realize that you're setting the prisoner free. To forgive is to realize you're the prisoner. Imprisoned by your own hurt, your own hate, you're tormented. Let it go. Let it go. If someone comes to mind, let it go. Now, I'm not saying go to them and say, you know, I used to hate you, but now I like you. Well, should I do that? You should do that only if there's something between the two of you and you know that and they know that's in Matthew 5. If you have something against somebody, go. If they have something against you, go. But I would say, Holy Spirit, I want to let this go. Is there something more that I need to do? Do I need to write a letter? Do I need to make a phone call? Or is it just good? Because I want to be free and be free indeed. The Lord wants you to be free and free indeed. You leave here liberated, lighter than when you came in. Not tethered to the past, but released to the future that God has for you. You say, what is that? We'll see that next week.